station. This is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
We are ready.
Copy that. Houston ACR, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Houston ACR. How do you hear me?
And station has you loud and clear.
Great, thank you. Stand by for opening remarks.
Hi, I'm Annie Rundy, she, her. I'm an education ranger at Mount Rainier National Park. We're so grateful to the astronauts of Mission 66 for joining us today and answering questions from middle school students at Columbia Crest ASTEM Academy. Here's our first question.
Hi, I'm Alan. My question is, how do you use teamwork in space?
Hi, Adeline. So we use teamwork for a number of different things. First off, we use teamwork when we're training. So as a crew, we train to go to space together, and we use teamwork for a lot of the different procedures we practice for, but then we also use teamwork just on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, if Kayla is doing an event or I'm doing an event during the day, then I may see how she's doing, if I'm ahead or behind, and vice versa. So throughout the day, we're constantly moving around on tasks, moving through the station, and using teamwork both in our day-to-day lives as well as our training time.
Hi, I'm Lauren, and my question is, what are some of the hardest parts about being an astronaut?
Well, I think one of the hardest parts about our current mission is being away from our families. 6 months away from home is a pretty long time, even for people who got kind of used to that in the military, like Raja and I. But luckily, we have a lot of resources to stay in touch with them back home. And then in terms of our job, I think some of the hardest tasks we do are spacewalks and spacewalk training. That's really tough skills. It's a physically and mentally challenging experience, and it's also pretty lengthy. We're outside for 6.5 hours during spacewalks on average, so you can get pretty tired doing that. And I think for a lot of us, learning Russian is challenging. So I would encourage all of you to pay attention in your language classes and get good at learning languages, because that's definitely a challenge for all of us.
Hi, I'm Bridget, and my question is, after being in space, did it change the way you thought about life?
Well, Bridget, I think different people have different reactions, but I think what's really similar and that what did change is I definitely realized how boundaryless the actual Earth is. And so I think we'd heard about that and people talk about that, that there's no lines or countries and you can't see those, but it really is profound when you see it out the window, and you have to look at a map or look at a computer to really figure out where those divisions are, because they don't exist naturally. And so that's pretty cool and pretty profound. And I think the other thing for me that changes is just realizing how fragile the Earth is. And so we get to see the sunrise and sunset 16 times a day because we're orbiting every 90 minutes. And so when you do that and the sun's coming over the horizon or going below the horizon, you can actually see the layers of the atmosphere, and it's super, super thin compared to the Earth and then just all the black space around it. And it reminds us that everything we know, live, love, breathe is in that really, really thin layer. So we really have to take care of it.
Hi, my name is Michael. How do you grow plants in space?
It's an awesome time to be asking that question, because we've been doing a lot of plant experiments lately. We actually have several different ways that we grow plants up here and different types of experiments. So sometimes we grow really little plants, and usually those experiments are studying how plants' gene expression changes in microgravity. And we even have a centrifuge where we can spin plants, and that way we can simulate different levels of gravity, like the ones we might see someday on the moon or Mars. And sometimes, I think probably our favorite is when we get to grow bigger plants and edible plants. So when we first got up here, we had a crop of chilies growing, and a couple weeks after we arrived, we harvested a batch of those and got to eat them. We had a taco night to celebrate our chilies, and they were quite excellent. But all the things plants need to grow on Earth is what we control up here. So their light, their nutrients, their oxygen content, and we just make sure that they have everything they need and check on them often, and they actually grow pretty well.
Hi, my name is Annika, and I was wondering, are there any lasting effects on your mind and body after a flight?
So, Annika, that's one of the big questions we're trying to answer. And so one of our crewmates is Mark Vandehei, who will be up here for basically a year. And so there's also been several other astronauts, Christina Cook, Scott Kelly, and others who are continuing to push how long we can stay in space. And we're using that to study what happens afterwards. So we know that there's a lot of things that do happen. There's some bone loss. There's arterial stiffening. And there's a lot of things that are very similar to what happens when you age. And then when Scott Kelly was up here for a year, they were actually able to compare his DNA to his brother's DNA, which was even at the genetic level, we saw changes. But interestingly there, we saw that the DNA was changing opposite of what it would normally do when you're aging. But then when he came back to Earth, it went back to normal. And so there's a whole lot of studies. Kayla and I, on a regular basis, we're doing science for scientists, but there's also a whole lot of science on our bodies. So us giving samples of our bodies or doing different activities, and they're measuring us both at large scale levels, how we're functioning, how we're thinking, but also microscopically and taking samples and looking at our DNA. And so, yeah, there's a lot that changes in space, and we're still trying to figure out, does that change continue in a predictable way, or is there some point, like maybe 15 months, 18 months, 2 years, where something drastically changes? And that's important as we go to the moon to stay and as we go to Mars, which will take a long time to get there and back.
Hi, my name's Luca, and my question is, what made you want to be an astronaut?
Hi, Luca. For me, I didn't grow up dreaming specifically of becoming an astronaut. I knew I liked school. I was interested in STEM. My science and math classes were my favorite in high school. I knew I wanted to study engineering in college, and I knew I wanted to serve. And that's how I ended up at the Naval Academy and then eventually serving in the submarine force. And it wasn't until after I had served on a submarine that it first occurred to me that I could even become an astronaut. That experience of challenging myself to lead and work as a team in a really highly technical, mission-driven environment, and then understanding all the parallels all of a sudden between serving on a submarine and working and living in space is really what inspired me to think that maybe that's something I could do. And I had some really good mentors who encouraged me to apply, and lucky for me, it worked out.
Hi, I'm Addison, and my question is, what is your favorite astronaut food?
Ooh, Addison. So I was actually really pleasantly surprised by how good the food is up here. So like Kayla said, we were both in the military, and so we'd experienced what's called military MREs, which are dehydrated food. And I'll say this food's better than that. So here's the packets they come in. Kayla will show you some of them. And so we've got everything from fruit and veggies to meats to desserts. So I think my personal favorite is when we kind of make our own things. And so we had a semi-pizza night, and I say semi because we don't actually have real pizza, but we used basically tortillas, and then we had some tomato sauce and put other things on it, and then we had to get creative about how to cook a pizza. So we used some aluminum foil in the food warmer we have to semi-melt or make the cheese soft, but it was close to at-home pizza. So I think that was my favorite so far. Like Kayla mentioned, a real hit was taco night when we used the chilies we'd grown up here and actually got to have that. And I think fresh food is always popular. There's something about the texture of something fresh, so like fresh fruit and vegetables, and the crispiness of it is very satisfying, since a lot of the food we eat, when it's rehydrated, it's a little more mushy. And so the sensation of your teeth like biting into something that's more firm and crispy is really fun. And so we always look forward to visiting cargo vehicles, because there's usually some surprise snacks hidden for us in there.
Hi, my name is Willa, and my question was, how challenging was the training?
Our training for spaceflight is a bit of a marathon. Raj and I are both in the same astronaut training class, so we started in 2017 and did just over 2 years of basic training before we graduated from being astronaut candidates to being assignable astronauts. And then once we got assigned to our mission, we trained for probably another 1.5 years straight, just before we were able to launch. So it's long, but the entire team is there to support us and teach us everything we needed to know to succeed in our evaluations and our jobs. So it's hard work, especially like I mentioned, spacewalk training. And I think for Raj and I both, Russian language is a tough one. Robotics training, flight training, which is easier for Raja because he's a military pilot, so he has a lot of experience with that. And of course, learning how to live on the space station. But like I said, because we have a fantastic team of instructors, we're able to get through it.
Hi, I'm Charlotte, and my question is, How long does it take to become an astronaut?
Well, Charlotte, it's kind of a lifetime adventure. Like Kayla said, it's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. In terms of the actual training, from the time we started to the time we launched was about 4 years, but it really varies based on launch vehicles and launch schedules. But, there's every class every 4 years right now is how often they start the astronaut training, and that again varies based on what's going on. But as Kayla mentioned, we train for about 2 years and then about another 1.5 to 2 years for a specific mission. So once you're qualified, then you still have to train for whatever particular mission you're going to be assigned to.
Hi, I'm Bailey. How do you guys exercise in space?
Hi, Bailey. We have 3 different exercise machines up here, so we do get some variety, which is really nice. We have a bike. There's no seat on it because you don't need to sit on anything in space, but it's basically like a bike you would see in a gym, a stationary bike. Raj is doing a good demo here. We also have a treadmill, but because our bodies are in an environment where we feel weightless, essentially, up here. And so we actually have a really strong bungee system that pulls us onto a treadmill. And we can run pretty much any workout you can imagine. And then we also have a weightlifting machine that allows us to do almost any weightlifting exercise that you can do on the ground with a barbell or a cable. And so between those things, we're able to stay in shape cardiovascularly, but also keep our bones strong and develop our muscles.
Hi, my name is Alice, and my question is, how long did it take to get used to the zero gravity?
Hey, Alice, it really depends on the person. I think there's kind of 2 parts of it. One is just getting used to being in space and the sensation of falling. So if you've ever been on a roller coaster and there's that kind of feeling right as you go over the top and your stomach starts to fall, you essentially have that feeling all the time. And at first it feels a little odd and your brain doesn't really know what to do with it. But over time, your brain gets used to it and it just becomes natural. So there's that sort of physical part. And then there's the perception part of getting used to the fact that the walls, the ceilings, everything around you is working space. And so you can quickly reorient, work on the ceiling, work on the walls, and it takes your brain a while to get used to that. So I think for me personally, it was about 3 days where I kind of had just my head didn't feel right. It just felt like I was really stuffed up. And after about 3 days, then I felt normal, although I still get more congested from time to time. And then for my brain, it was about 2 weeks, I think, the first time where I came out of my crew quarters and it didn't matter which direction I was. Up until that point, I would always find myself trying to reorient my body, so I was with my feet on what I perceived as the ground. And now I really have no sensation of that. So it's pretty cool how quickly your brain rewires itself and adapts, and that's actually one of the things the scientists study with us. Some of the experiments we do are how our brain and perceptions work, as it helps with people who've had injuries or disabilities with different senses, and how to rewire your brain and reconnect those neuron paths. So it's really cool and amazing how fluid the brain is.
Hi, my name is Mara, and my question is, where do you sleep in space?
We're actually in front of one of our sleeping quarters right here that actually goes back into the rack bay. This is where our crewmate Matthias sleeps. I think Raj is going to go in there, prove you can get all the way inside. But we have 4 others like that aboard the space station. And inside is kind of like our office and our bedroom. We have sleeping bags that are strung up on the wall. And we also have computers so that we can get some work done, send emails, and call home from there. And everybody has a little bit of a different technique, but basically you're sleeping in a sleeping bag like you're camping.
Hi, I'm David. How old do you have to be an astronaut?
Hey, David, so there's no real age limit, but there are requirements to apply to be an astronaut. So essentially, you have to have a master's degree in a science or engineering field or be a doctor. So in terms of the time it would take to get those degrees, usually your early to mid-20s would be the absolute earliest you could apply to be an astronaut. But there's no hard cutoff or requirement other than having the educational requirements met.
Hi, my name is Dylan, and I was wondering what's the hardest thing about being an astronaut?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think the hardest thing right now for us is being away from home. But luckily, we have an awesome team and space family up here, so that makes every day feel like we're, with friends. So it makes the time go by a lot faster.
Hi, I'm Dash. What does it feel like when you get launched into space?
Well, Dash, it feels a lot like the training we did and a lot like the simulator, which is a testament to the training teams at NASA and in our case, SpaceX that got us ready for launch. Honestly, we talked about it afterwards. It felt so much like the simulator that it almost made you question if you're actually in the rocket. But there's definitely more vibration and sound than in the simulator. I think for me personally, it felt like I was in an elevator the first stage. It felt, if you've ever been like on an amusement park elevator or something like that, where it feels like you're going up really fast, that was the sensation. And then I think the other thing that struck me was the sound and the change in thrust. And so what happens is as the rocket accelerates through the atmosphere, there's a point where the engines actually have to throttle down because it's accelerating so fast and the air is pushing against it so hard that if you didn't do anything, the rocket would crush itself. And so the rocket actually throttles down, and you can actually feel that. And then the other thing that you can definitely feel is when the first stage separates and the second stage lights. And so when the first stage separates, you go from feeling all this acceleration to getting thrown forward, kind of like if you stop suddenly in your car, that sensation of getting thrown forward, and then you're weightless for a second, and then the second stage lights, and then you get thrown backwards in your seat. So it's equivalent to stopping really fast in your car and then accelerating really fast in your car, except there's a whole lot more noise and excitement. And then after the second stage cutoff, or what we call SECO, that's the first time you're actually weightless, and then that's when we talked about earlier, like your brain has to figure out what is going on because you feel like you're falling, and you are, but you're falling constantly, and you have to then adapt to that.
Hi, my name is Linnea from Columbia Crest. We are all so grateful for your time to answer our questions. We really appreciate it. Good luck on Mission 66.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event. Thank you.
Thank you to all participants. Station, we are now resuming normal operational communications.